Thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone out there in virtual land. Thank you all very much for joining us today. On behalf of all of us at Seyfarth, we are really excited to be talking with you all about this topic that is frankly near and dear to our hearts. We know it's near and dear to a lot of our clients' hearts, or it sure better be in the coming years. And we are really excited also to be partnering with the ACC, the Northeast chapter in particular, but we have a long-standing history at Seyfarth of really valuing our relationships with the ACC in the Northeast, in the South, out in the West Coast, all across the country, and on a national level. We really value the work that you all are doing for your members and the collaboration that you inspire amongst your membership and with your law firm networks. We think it's really great and a really valuable forum for us to exchange ideas like what we're going to be talking about today. And have to mention, we're going to be very looking forward to next month when hopefully we'll get to see some of you live and in person at the first annual meeting since 2019. Very thrilled about it. So let me start by introducing myself. This is actually working backwards on the screen. My name's Dustin Robinson. I am Seyfarth's Client Engagement Manager, which is a fancy way of saying that I get to work with clients, in particular as we're onboarding, but over the course of their lifespan, in particular around the legal operation solutions that we at Seyfarth really bring to bear on our delivery of legal services, whether that's technology, data, project management, process improvement. I get to work with clients and strategize with them on what is helpful to them and hopefully inspire them to have discussions within their own departments about what they can actually use in this operation space that we frankly have been doing since before legal ops was a thing. With that, I'll pass it to Heather to introduce herself.
Thanks, Dustin. Hello, I'm Heather Eskera, the Assistant Director of our Lien Solutions team here at the firm, and I help lead a team of project managers and process specialists at the firm. I'm excited to share some of the tools and techniques that we have used with our internal clients within the law firm, as well as our external clients, and specifically within their in-house legal departments, those with legal operation function, as well as those without. With that, Eric?
Thanks, Heather. My name is Eric Greenberg. I'm a partner in the Boston office of Seyfarth Shaw. I'm a member of the firm's real estate practice group. I get to work with Dustin and Heather almost every day because I use legal ops functions with all of my clients. And so this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. So why don't we jump in? I just would like to give a quick overview of the program and sort of the backdrop of why we're facing these legal ops issues. As many of you know, the legal industry has seen unprecedented growth in the last several years, which has only been exacerbated by the pandemic. And with this growth has also come incredible and long-lasting change to how attorneys engage in the practice of law. In-house legal departments have perhaps witnessed the most profound change as the legal industry has grappled with the new hybrid work dynamic. And what we're seeing is with flexibility seems to come even more responsibility. In-house legal departments are being tasked to do more with much less. And the economic uncertainty has led to budget belt tightening. All this, despite companies growing and expanding and doing more work than ever before. In order to keep up to meet increasing demands of your business units and in-house clients, in-house practitioners must be their own legal ops function, especially if your outside legal providers do not provide such services. So what does this mean? Well, our program today will cover what tools and strategies your in-house legal departments can use to become more efficient, more cost-effective, and expedient in today's cutthroat legal environment. This includes 1, process improvement practices to identify bottlenecks, unnecessary steps, and to create more efficient paths for streamlined work. 2, we're going to cover using customized technology that is appropriate and useful for your specific needs. 3, we're going to cover right-sized resourcing, finding the right mix of internal resources and usage of outside legal counsel. 4, data analysis, how to collect information and use it to your advantage. And last but not least, number 5, alternative pricing, how to work with outside legal providers to allow for cost certainty and fairness. We'll now go through each of these topics in greater detail. As we go through each topic, though, remember, these strategies and tools apply whether you're a one-person legal department or a 100-person legal department of a Fortune 500 company. Heather, why don't you start us off with process improvement?
Great, thank you. To that end, we thought it would be great to share not only just some of our tools and techniques that we have been using with our clients, but really the ones that we have been using working in-house with the in-house legal departments. The best place really to start is with process, which really leads to the process improvement. I do want to mention that the foundation of all our learnings and much of our toolkit comes from the Lean Six Sigma that we use, and we refer to it as the DMAIC life cycle. And it's our method of problem solving. And DMAIC stands for define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. Basically, what we're doing in the define phase is just really trying to understand the problem that we're trying to solve. In the measure phase, we're looking to understanding that problem and understanding the impact to where when we do improve it, what will it have within our organization or the project. And then, of course, analyzing potential solutions that you're going to improve along the way. And then lastly, you would want to put together controls to make sure that any of the improvements you put in really stick. I won't go into really any more detail on this in this session, but just wanted to give credit where credit was due and give you a place to go to do some more research on your own if you wish. So let's take a closer look into tools and approaches into project management and process improvement. If the first one is process mapping, if any of you would ever want to describe how a certain process works within your organization, chances are you may uncover several different answers in discussing what that process looks like. For each of us, there is a version of how we think it is, how the process works. If we were to actually sit down and watch the process or map it out from beginning to end and count the steps along the way and thinking through all that takes place, that would be a version of how it actually is. And we often call this the hidden factory. Then if we were able to look at it, analyze it for what it has to happen and find the most efficient ways to make that happen, we would have a version of how it should be. And this how it should be version is the potential you can achieve through process mapping. It's actually pretty easy to get started. Process mapping can be done virtually or in person. In fact, over the last 2.5 years, we have done process mapping strictly virtual. It's an effective way to gain the common understanding of the processes and identify the process wastes. Eric mentioned just bottlenecks in the process. Those all come to life when you're together in a process session together. It can be time boxed and you still get what you need from a process mapping session. It just takes an adjustment to how you facilitate it to make it work. However, I suggest that a best practice and to get the most out of your session would be to do it in person. And I'm so excited that I'm actually going to be doing this in person with a client next week. It helps really bring the groups along, especially when it's facilitated by someone who really can keep the group on task and organized, but allow for productive dialogue and problem solving. Oftentimes, this is where a simple root cause analysis can be constructed by just asking the group the 5 whys. You just keep asking why until you run out of potential causes, and you explore the most impactful where you have some influence over the process first. All you'll need is a facilitator, and a facilitator, could be somebody within your own group, your own department, could be HR, a blank wall, or even a window, stickies or large Post-its. Of course, you would want to make sure that you have a representative from each department that touches the process. You don't want to forget about your clients or customers or even third parties. Oftentimes, I'm finding that a lot of quick wins can be gained when others that are involved in your process understand your process. And of course, we all want to make it easier to work with each other. So that just comes out naturally in a process matching session. And there are plenty of software packages to help make pretty process maps, and these packages are really useful for process documentation. Making a process map more visible to everyone engages the organization's collective expertise and unlocks dozens of solutions. Next slide. So what does a process map show us? A process map shows us each of the steps along the way in terms of what needs to take place. It helps us understand each other's roles and responsibilities. It also will help unveil certain bottlenecks and unnecessary steps along the way. Sometimes there are steps that, even though we think they're unnecessary, they are important for other business functions throughout the organization. So you may have to identify other alternatives or ways to make those types of activities less burdensome, but you still may need to do them. And at the end, it's really an effective communication and training tool. So here's a sample of what a documented process could look like using a software documentation training for going forward. It can be used to help show a baseline for improvement. You can capture a current state as well as begin to design an improved state, or we also call that future state. Think of all the assembly required items we've purchased over the years. The assembly is made much easier with pictures, and sometimes the words just add confusion. It's the same when you're attempting to solve business problems. A picture of the process is easier to understand and notice potential problem areas. Chances are that if the process map is messy, then the process is messy as well. There are three types of maps that are most prevalent. The first of which is a flow diagram, and that is one where you document each step of the process and you include the decision trees, and those are best for documentation. But there's also swim lanes, and those are a simplified process diagram. It's organized in lanes by department or role, and those are best for analyzing who does what. And then, of course, there is the value stream map, which is a very high level operations diagram, and it includes information about the performance data. How long are you in this step? How many people does it take to do this? And these are really important for diagnosing where waste issues are in the process. Next slide. And of course, from my project manager hat, I would say that project plan is one of the essential tools in the process improvement. From an operations perspective, you'll need ways to get to figure out, what to track, when to track, and who is actually doing all the necessary steps to complete the work. That's where a project plan comes into play. Project plans can vary at high level, or they can get very granular when it comes to task tracking. This planning will allow you and your team to stay on track and meet the necessary deadlines for a successful outcome. The good thing about using technologies such as Smartsheet or MS Project, if one of the deadlines slip, it can be set up to modify all the tasks that are not yet started, and also will show what tasks will be impacted by the deadlines that have been missed. As we ourselves applied all of these process improvement and project management concepts to our internal operations, we realized that we need ways sort of bringing the process improvements to life to help us make these improvements happen in the real world. And that's where we started thinking through how technology might be able to help. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Dustin to talk a little bit more about technology and resourcing approaches can help jumpstart your operations journey.
Thank you very much, Heather. I think it's actually really, well, first of all, let me acknowledge, and I neglected to mention this at the top of the program, please do feel free to submit Q&A along the way. I myself, I'm sharing my screen, I'm not seeing the Q&A, but Heather and Eric are, and for anything that we're not able to answer live in real time, we will get back to you and follow up so that we can make sure that your questions are getting answered. We do certainly want to hear them. As Heather just reiterated, it's actually really fun for us to go through this conversation because it really forces us to reconsider our own internal journey at Seyfarth when we were effectively building our own operations function. We didn't know it at the time, but that's what it would come to be called. But back when we started our Seyfarth Lean journey in 2005, I want to say it was, looking at how Lean and Six Sigma could be applied to the delivery of legal services, it naturally led us to look first to process improvement. And as Heather just alluded to, at a certain point, you want to think about how it is that process improvement can be brought to life. And that's when we started exploring applications of technology around about 2010, 11, 12 or so. And I would say that the concept of legal ops, we really only heard for the first time in 2014, 15, 16. So we were building this before it became such a defined and important part of a law department. So we had been on this journey just as law departments had been on a similar journey. So I'm going to be talking with you all for a bit, both about technology and right-sized resourcing, because we really do think they really complement each other. And before I get into the right-sized resourcing, let's start with technology, which actually is kind of a weird place to start, because one of the key things that we like to say when talking with our clients is do not just throw technology at the solution. It's such a knee-jerk, almost sort of reaction to think, well, there's got to be a tech thing that will help me make my life easier. And yes, it will, but only after you've done the homework up front of thinking through the process and how it is that things are actually going on within your department, within your teams, with your outside providers. All of that needs to be understood before you can start thinking through how it is can I actually use technology. Technology is a tool. It's not an end result in and of itself. It's not a Band-Aid, but it does have a lot of power to bring. What we're really going to be focusing on today is not the grand technology solutions, right? We're talking about being your own legal ops function, taking those tools and resources that you have at your disposal within your department or easily off the shelf on a fairly 101 level. There's certainly 301, 401, 501 concepts out there, and you've all heard them at this point. Automation, artificial intelligence, natural language processing, all of it's 2022. The sky is the limit as far as how we can bring to bear technology solutions. And we at Seyfarth are exploring some pretty cool stuff in that space. But that's not where we want to focus on today. We are talking about using what you have readily at your disposal to bring to bear. And really, when we look at what it is that we're trying to accomplish through technology, thinking through these first three concepts of discipline, order, and structure, it's really putting a framework around what it is that you're grappling with. You know, many of us on this call went to law school. We are or have legal training, have been steeped in the legal industry. And I don't think it's an overstretch to state that legal folks oftentimes think in terms of the abstract. They're dealing with very difficult argumentative concepts and strategy and all of this stuff that really is at the crux of true proper lawyering. But there is structure and order underneath all of it, and an architecture that if you take the legwork and the time to define can actually help you. And that's what technology can help you do. And if nothing else, it can help you keep all of your ducks in a row while you're engaging in that high level of legal analysis or that high stakes negotiation with the opposing party or what have you. As alluded to, it allows you to do more with less, essentially. So it's really going back to the concept of the simple machine that you might have gotten in 9th or 12th grade physics or whatever it was, 11th grade, I don't know. The concept of levers and pulleys and axles and all of those things that require minimal effort on our part to actually achieve great outcomes. That is what technology can do. It's I don't want to say a blunt instrument, but it can be in terms of actually allowing you to achieve a lot of things that otherwise it would be very difficult to achieve. And I think it's important to note that there are various options available to you, and that's going to step into the resourcing category. There are homegrown things that you can create within your own, not only your departments, but within your organizations, and that's what I'm really going to focus on here in a second. But then there are also things that you can obtain from your vendors, your legal service providers. Look for others to help and give you technology resources. Certainly there are grand scale folks, you know, your Thomson Reuters, your Wolters Kluwers, et cetera, and I'm sure many of you have had conversations with them. But don't be afraid to think outside of the traditional vendor realm and ask other folks what it is that they may have to offer. And that's really a key component of this concept of right-sized resourcing. So often when we're talking about the concept of resourcing, we are thinking about how you're bringing to bear the right people on the right processes. And that is very true. But in this context, what we really want to emphasize is if you are trying to function as your own legal ops function and you're trying to achieve things on your own, look outside into the rest of your organization for ideas and the things that they have to offer. It was really important to us at Seyfarth when we undertook our journey. Number one, from leadership that was really encouraging us to take these steps, looking to process improvement specialists internally to really build a project management office, build it from the ground up based off of professionals that we sourced from all over the organization. Heather doesn't mention it, but she came from finance, is where she actually started her journey at Seyfarth before moving into project management. And I think that's a really important talking point when thinking through how to be your own legal ops function within your law department. Talk to IT, talk to finance, talk to HR. They all have things that they can share with you, that tools that they use that you may not necessarily have thought of. Importantly, in the context of technology, of course, that is really going to involve your IT and your information management teams. And they would be thrilled to partner with you on different solutions. And that is what we found at Seyfarth, is when we started talking with our technology services group, they had ideas that had not occurred to us. They are the experts when it comes to those technology resources. Our attorneys are the experts on, well, what is it that we're actually having to do with our clients? It's the team up of those teams that really achieves great results. And that's really leveraging your subject matter experts where it makes sense. But then also leveraging outsourcing where it makes sense. So I'm not using outsourcing in the term that we often think of, like outsourcing or far shoring or anything like that. I'm thinking or using the terminology in terms of engaging with your providers, whether they be your law firms, whether they be your vendors of other services, whether they be consultancies, alternative legal service providers. You've all heard many of these names in the game. They're going to be at the national meeting or the annual meeting in October in Las Vegas. They are happy to talk to you and brainstorm with you. And I would encourage you to reach out to those folks, not necessarily to hire them for anything, but just to get the juices flowing. This is a relatively defined universe that we're all operating within, and we've all got to talk to each other about these topics. And we all have to be open to improving and continuously changing and making ourselves better. I think it's very important, and I've watched this at Seyfarth over my past 10 years here. Folks 10 years ago would have been saying, oh, well, what I do is an art. It's not a science. You can't possibly distill this into a technology solution. 7 years later, those folks are evangelists for exactly what we were asking of them 10 years ago. And that is a journey that everyone is continuously on. And as I already alluded to, it is 2022. There is no room to be afraid of technology at this point in the game. In my opinion, and this is not an official opinion, it's borderline malpractice to be afraid of technology. And you have to be willing to engage with those tools as needed. So a few little tech things that I do want to go into that really bring to life this concept of right-sized resourcing. I'm starting off here with, I'm sure there are some of you out there who have gotten to talk with us about our own internal in-house built and designed collaboration platform, Link. This is an example of what we did internally as we were building out our own internal legal ops function. We use it internally, and we certainly use it with our clients. It's a Microsoft SharePoint-based system that we set about building almost, it'll be 10 years, but it actually is literally 10 years ago. And what we found was when we started, we were using an off-the-shelf product that just frankly, we couldn't bend to the will that we really wanted it to. So we set about building one of our own. Now we do have the luxury of having an AmLaw 100 technology team at our disposal and a client services group that was in its nascent stages at that time that we really devoted the resources to it. So we acknowledge this is kind of an advanced 201 example of building a technology suite, but anything from document storage and sharing to data analysis and number crunching to financial and spend management. These are all things that we felt were important to us to be able to do with our clients. We're not the only ones. And so I acknowledge this to you all that whether we're your service provider, whether any of the law firms that you use, a number of the law firms that you use have tools like this that they should be talking to you about and you should be asking them about. So do not hesitate to ask them what they have at their disposal. And gosh knows we're happy to talk about it. But there are a whole realm of other resources that you also can use. I actually don't have it listed here, but I want to harken back to something that Heather mentioned a little bit ago in terms of the fact that for the past couple of years, yeah, we've been having to do our process mapping virtually. And one of the tools that we used to facilitate that was a tool called Miro. I don't have it listed here. And as Heather has alluded to, and I fully agree, there's no substitute for in-person if you can do it, if you can swing it. But the reality is I know a lot of you are now working in hybrid, if not fully remote, workplace scenarios. Some of your colleagues may have moved elsewhere across the country. We don't want you to embrace or see process mapping exercises as being this, huge investment of time and money to get everyone in one place. Using a tool like Miro allows everyone to do a virtual exchanging of sticky notes and to engage in real time, perhaps with a facilitator, so that you are making, and it's not expensive, I will tell you that, but it's readily available. When we started looking around online at the start of the pandemic as to how we were going to continue to make process mapping work, that is what we found. And so that's also a good tip here, is just don't be afraid to Google things that could be of use to you. Now, starting with what I've actually got on the screen here, look at, I'm sure 95% of you have some sort of Microsoft suite that you've got going right now, whether it's 365 or you haven't migrated yet. There are all kinds of tools within that, and this is how 101 I'm getting. But that is because in our experience, we find that a lot of people are frankly afraid of Microsoft Excel at a minimum. I have seen over the years, I find myself, instead of saying no more wire hangers, it's no more word tables, please move it to Microsoft Excel. That's not something to be afraid of. I hope that not most of you are afraid of it, but there's really a lot of power that can be obtained from it. At the very least, you're not scribbling stuff on a piece of paper. I mean, your InfoGov team thanks you for that. But if you've got a volume of anything that you're having to track, whether it's visas, whether it's trademarks, whether it's leases, whether it's cases, doing so in that disciplined, structured, ordered format that I was talking about earlier, is going to make your world so much easier and so much better. And this is a true business legal ops concept, is being able to track the status of everything that you're undertaking in a given moment. There are things that you can use in Excel beyond just a simple lookup. And this is also, again, something where your finance team actually may know a lot about how to leverage Excel in a way that you don't. Go and ask them, hey, can you teach me how to do a lookup function in Excel or something like that? And I'm sure they would be happy to help you. It also can be a good resource if another crucial aspect of legal ops, obviously, and Eric's going to touch on this in a minute, is spend and budget management. And so speaking of finance, Excel can be one of your best friends in tracking the ASAs that you may have going with your various providers or any sort of financial spend that is in place. Smartsheet is the next thing that I want to talk about here. That is really getting to what Heather was alluding to earlier in terms of project planning. Smartsheet is something that you can find readily online. It is a very easy, user-friendly project planning tool. That's probably not the technical definition of it. Also, there is Microsoft Project for project planning purposes. But Smartsheet, we have found, and we use it a lot internally. In fact, we've integrated it within our technology ecosystem. It's a very collaborative way of tracking those milestones and those key dates and those dependencies that Heather showed you earlier in the project plan. And it's something that everyone can engage with in real time online. That also is something that we have found to be very important, that these be tools that live and breathe online, not statically on your desktop. And also don't be afraid of Google Docs. Obviously, that's another something in the similar vein. But Smartsheet is a way for, if you are tracking a project, a legal ops project, allowing your full team to do so collaboratively. Fillable PDF and templatized documents. Again, I'm dealing with rudimentary concepts here, but you would be surprised at the number of folks who really don't harness the power of these. Using this, and we'll talk about this a little bit later when we get into some of the war stories or challenges that we've encountered working with some of our clients. Something as simple as that will bring that discipline and order and structure to your organization, especially as you all are having to interface with your clients out in the business. If you can tell them what it is that you need in the form of templates or fillable PDFs that they have to give you in a very defined fashion, it's going to make your life that much easier. Think of it as when you are doing some sort of online application, you're filling out a form, there's data validation along the way, right? If you're giving a credit card number, well, it better be 16 numbers, otherwise it's not going to allow you to follow through. That's the sort of thing that you can obtain from these fillable PDFs and templates that make sure that you are getting the information that you need. SurveyMonkey is another way of very easily engaging with your organization. I also mean, even before SurveyMonkey, talk to your IT teams about what sorts of tools there are at your disposal already within your organization to survey the organization. I'm sure they have some ideas, but this is, we know that this is a pain point for folks who are in that kind of business of law space where they're having to interface with other departments throughout the enterprise. Talking with them and soliciting their feedback via surveys like this is a good way of getting them on your side so that you can get the information from them that you need to make sure that the ops of the department are running smoothly. And then finally, knowledge management resources. I'm alluding here to Practical Law Company. I already mentioned Thomson Reuters and Wolters Kluwer, and gosh knows what level that is, Thomson Reuters, LexisNexis. All of these resources out there that will allow you to get some quick and dirty access, for lack of a better term, to 50 state surveys, to things that certainly you could, quite frankly, you can get them from us, you can get them from your legal service providers. We're happy to provide, but there's a lot of this already out there in the ether that you can engage in some self-help on your own. Knowledge management is one of the disciplines of legal ops. So if you are trying to explore how you can bring greater knowledge management to within your department, explore some of these resources that you can make available to your team for relatively low subscription fees that will allow you to do some of the lawyering for yourselves. I mean, we don't want to discount our services, but we want you to make your lives easier. And so that is the goal here. Now, a lot of this is really teeing up this this fourth concept that I'm going to pass to Eric in just a second. But obviously, a lot of what you can get from technology is actual data and metrics and all of that. I mean, that's really where was the next part of our journey at Seyfarth, is realizing everything that we could extract once we were tracking things. Well, then we can use this data. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Eric to talk about what value you can gain from that. Oh, and Eric, you're actually on mute.
There we go. Thanks, Dustin. Now, I have to admit, us attorneys never expected to work with bar graphs and data dashboards or have to crunch numbers when we graduated from law school. It's just not what we signed up for. However, a crucial part of being your own legal ops function is to work with data. Specifically, you will want to identify the data you need to track, utilize a system or a manner of tracking such data, and then once you have the data, what do you do with it? You have to analyze the data and use it to your advantage. Data tracking and analysis is incredibly helpful for any practice area, whether it's litigation, real estate transactions, immigration, general business compliance. It works for every practice. Now, what can data tracking and analysis reveal? Plenty, but just some of the high points would be you can reveal pain points, cost outliers, training opportunities, and even successes that you can report up to a board of directors or to the company CEO. So it's important to identify what we call key performance indicators, also known as KPIs, that should be tracked in order to evaluate company performance as well as outside counsel performance. A key performance indicator is a quantifiable measure of performance in a particular area over some period of time for a specific objective. So what are some examples of actual KPI? I'll give two examples. One example, let's say there's a company that routinely faces and settles lawsuits. They may want to track the types of the claims that are filed, how much pre-litigation settlements cost over time, and if cases do go to trial, what are the on average litigation costs? Tracking and reviewing this data can help a company budget its legal spend for a year. It can also help budget for anticipated settlement claims. And then also it can influence company behaviors and policies towards future claims and future problems. A second example, and these are just two examples, this is in the transactional context. A company that spends significant legal dollars on real estate transactions may want to track how long it takes to negotiate a deal, as well as the overall cost to negotiate those deals. On this particular example, I can dive a little deeper because it comes from the data collection and analysis I do with some of my real estate clients. One client I work with signs over 400 leases each year. So it's a lot of legal spend, it's a lot of legal work. Among many other data points that we track for this particular client, we track how long it takes to negotiate leases by geographical region. So we can slice and dice the data and really dig deeper. Tracking this allows us and the client to identify problem areas and training opportunities both on the client side and the law firm side. For example, if it takes on average 90 days to negotiate a lease in the southwest region of the country at $20,000 a lease, I'm just throwing out some random numbers, but it takes 150 days and 30,000 in the northeast region, we can use that data to find solutions to drive down the overall costs, but also to figure out whether there needs to be training on the attorneys that are working on the deal or the business units that are handling it on the client side. To collect and analyze data, a company may need to invest in technology or human resources, and most likely both. And Dustin covered some of those products that you can use, the Microsoft products, Smartsheet, fillable PDFs, external knowledge management resources. You need to use these to your advantage because, as we mentioned, having the army of one legal department, it's going to require a lot of work to take in this data, to organize it, and then to assess it. And of course, some firms like Seyfarth, we offer data tracking as part of our suite of services for many clients. Let's see, maybe the next slide. In the slides shown on this screen, these are examples of data dashboards that can be helpful to companies in their efforts to track and analyze data. I work with these dashboards with many of my clients. And again, it helps us figure out how to make a process more efficient, how to drive down costs, and also to identify areas in need of more attention and more training. Overall, analyzing data helps companies make more informed, better decisions. Everything from how to improve internal processes, budget planning, changing business strategies, and even how they partner with outside counsel. So that's actually a good segue into pricing options. So, now that we've talked about technology and collecting data, and we know sort of the scope of work that we need to do, we know what our pain points are. If you can't do the work internally, and we get that there's belt tightening and reductions in force in terms of legal departments, and you're going to be in a position where you have to work with outside counsel, price predictability, cost effectiveness is paramount concern for any in-house legal department. This is why we are seeing less and less reliance on the traditional hourly billing by law firms. More and more companies are pushing, and in many, many cases, requiring as the sort of a ticket of entry that outside counsel offer some sort of alternative fee arrangement, also known as AFAs. And each year, a higher percentage of legal work by our firm, by other firms, are handled on an AFA basis. This provides for cost certainty, cost control, and fairness. And arriving at an AFA can and should be a collaborative endeavor between the law departments and outside counsel. Now, there are a variety of AFA types that you can discuss with your outside legal providers. We'll just cover a few of the primary ones, but there's plenty more out there, and we'd be happy to discuss with you outside of this. But the first AFA type is fixed fee billing, and it's one of the most common types of AFAs that are offered. It's fixed fee billing or flat fee billing is where outside counsel will charge a set price for a type of matter, whether it be an immigration visa matter, a real estate loan, or a routine litigation matter. There will be one set fee for that particular type of matter. Now, to pursue a fixed fee arrangement, in-house counsel and outside counsel should consider the data we just discussed that has been collected and arrive at a fixed number that is appropriate for the type of matter involved. And there can be multiple fixed fees depending on the type of specific matter. We typically call this like a fixed fee band. For example, band 1 could be for low risk or complexity contracts and would be at a lower cost. Band 2 could be for medium risk or medium complexity contracts that would be at a slightly higher fee. And then band 3 could be for very high risk or very high complexity, sort of bet the company type of contracts that would command a higher fixed fee. The bottom line, though, is even within a fixed fee arrangement, you can have multiple levels of fixed fee. It doesn't have to be one size fits all. Another popular AFA type is portfolio pricing, with a lot of firms going to, sort of narrowing down their outside legal providers, wanting those legal providers to provide a bundle of work for them. So portfolio fee arrangements cover a bundle of work and are structured using a fixed annual, semi-annual, or quarterly fee for handling all legal work across multiple practice areas or within specific practice areas or even within a specific type of matter. Somewhat related is AFA type 3, which is retainer fees. Retainer fees are guaranteed prepayments made by a client to a firm, usually on a monthly or quarterly basis, for access to future advice and counseling services. In return, a firm guarantees its availability for a specified period of time to deliver specified services. Now, typically, we see retainer fees more used if the model is limited to general advice and counseling. But again, you can work with an outside legal provider on the specifics of what's included in a retainer fee model. Now, the final AFA type that we're going to discuss is performance and risk sharing structures. And you'll see this a lot more in litigation and dispute type of work, where performance-based or risk-sharing fee structures can be offered, including what we call risk collars and success fees, which I'll get into. Now, the use of a risk collar softens risk for certain pricing models by establishing a margin of error on either side of the underlying fee, with budget overruns or shortfalls beyond the agreed-upon fee collar triggering adjustments to those fees. So let's explain what that is. For example, if fees are below the agreed-upon fee collar, let's say it's $50,000, the firm may receive a negotiated bonus because the ultimate fees were below the collar. On the other hand, if the fees are above the collar amount, then maybe the client will receive a discount on the hourly rate above the collar. So there's some protection both ways. And then we also discussed about success fee arrangements, where a client pays a certain percentage of the monthly invoice. For example, it could be 80%, it could be 90%, and then there would be a holdback of the remaining amount, whether it's 10% or 20%, and it would be put in what's called a success bucket for the success fee arrangement. The client and the firm would then collaborate and work together to define success factors. And those could be anything. Obviously, it could be a successful outcome or disposition of a matter. It could be successful service delivery, efficiency, efficacy, or just the client having a really great experience. And at the conclusion of an engagement on a success fee arrangement, the client will evaluate the firm's performance, depending on the factors involved, and determine if a success fee has been earned, and if so, what payment is due. So those are 4 types of AFAs. There are plenty more that we'd be happy to discuss, but these are the ones that we're seeing out there in the market. And sort of just overall of that, what we're also seeing a lot in the market is just this concept of volume discounts. If a substantial amount of legal work is involved, and again, we're seeing a lot more firms narrowing down the outside legal providers, working with maybe 3 or 4 firms to handle a lot of work, fixed fees can be offered discounted on a tiered scale based on a client's anticipated volume of work. The client and the firm agree upon some kind of discount fee schedule that includes specific fee triggers, whether it's amount of legal spend hit or number of deals hit. And then when those triggers are hit, there will be greater discounts applied incrementally to those amounts that exceed whatever threshold you agree to. Now, the key to each of these arrangements, not any single one, but each is just a thorough understanding of the work to be performed, a client's goals, and everyone's preferred approach. And this is going to require a candid conversation between clients and law firms to understand those preferences and business goals in order to reach an AFA agreement that's specific to the client's needs and business and is workable for everyone. So in conclusion, these are the primary types of AFAs, and there's certainly more, but the AFA approach can yield significant benefits for companies, including enhanced cost predictability, ease of budget administration and monitoring, and really the centralization of matters so that you can get assisted with your own budget management and cost control. Dustin, why
Thanks,
don't
Eric.
we kick it over to you now that we've gone over these 5 topics, some sort of lessons learned and battle stories that we've seen out there in the real world.
Absolutely. Thanks, Eric. Now, before getting into that, I do want to reiterate, Eric has only teased the tip of the iceberg as far as AFAs, and there's so much more to be discussed. And the reality is we could do an hour-long program on mostly any of the 5 topics that we covered. And by no means is that the complete universe of the technical legal ops competencies is the phrase that you will often hear. There are many others as well, but these are the ones that we really think are kind of at the heart, especially if you're trying to do this journey on your own and really get going. And that is what we want to talk about now with you all for the remainder of the program, is actually bringing these disciplines to life and what we have encountered both internally and working with clients on their own sort of ops-oriented initiatives within their departments, and what's worked like gangbusters and what has been a little bit more challenging. So I was referring to them as war stories, and Heather very rightfully told me, no, don't look at them as war stories. There's the good and the challenges to be had, the lessons learned that we have really obtained from doing this hand-to-hand combat with our clients and hearing from our clients the hand-to-hand combat that they've done within their organizations. So I'm going to talk through a couple of these, and there are actually a lot of overlap between some of these. So for instance, both a large-scale contract workflow process and DocuSign, they're all part of that contract management universe that I'm sure you have all at some point been exposed to. It's one of the great white whales of the legal services and the alternative legal service providers and the legal consultancies, is how do we manage contracts? And that is one where we have seen clients be really susceptible to what I was referring to earlier, that sort of trap door or bear trap of, well, let's just get a technology solution. That's going to solve everything. And it never does. And that is what we have learned, and what we have really tried to impart to our clients is, before you try and throw one of the many contract management workflow technology software packages that are on the market, before you try and throw that onto your management of your contract, talk with all of the people involved in the contracting process. We have learned, if you don't get that buy-in from procurement, from IT, from the business up front, and if you try and do things in a unilateral fashion, it's destined for failure. In particular, if you talk with the businesses, you're going to, or the business or IT or procurement or whatever, you're going to find that there are actually some low-hanging fruit items that you really could pick off before even implementing the entire technology solution and the entire suite of contract management solutions. For instance, a DocuSign product, rolling that out, you know, one of our clients found to be somewhat difficult, especially trying to do it in the pandemic while also managing their day-to-day jobs. And that's one of the key takeaways here, is that you have to keep flying the plane while effectively building it and improving it. And that tends to be a little bit of a difficult thing to achieve in every, it's not always the easiest thing to achieve, let's put it that way. So instead of trying to boil the ocean, and how many other consulting phrases can I use over the course of this program, but instead of trying to boil the ocean, pick off those little bits and pieces that can really lead to some quick wins before you get everything built. And I think, Heather, you actually have some examples of how that's played out for some of your clients.
Sure. Actually, one of the things that they have in common is really, you know, firstly, as we've been saying, is you want to think of process when you are rolling out anything, introducing something new. You want to pilot. Pilot is the key. What you can do is look to the universe of the group that, you know, is going to implement the process. Try to understand those that are resistant to the change, and if you can bring them along the way, show them the value of what, for example, like DocuSign. What we've done in one situation, Dustin, and it was during the pandemic. We had a situation where our clients, their headquarters was located in, you know, the same location, but in 5 different buildings. And, you know, of course, at that point, you know, only 1 or 2 individuals were going into the office each day. And when you need to sign, actually execute a lease, that's really hard to navigate all those wet signatures, especially when you're located in different buildings. during a pandemic when the resources were rarely going into the office. And so one of the success factors that we had with actually changing that and allowing that organization to submit or have all of their leases signed by DocuSign was because we piloted just before the pandemic. We piloted with a group and we got some champions. And so we leveraged those champions so that we could then roll out the DocuSign function so that we could continuously have the business run. With that, Eric talked a little bit about cycle time. One thing that we found was, just that one exercise of trying to get a wet signature, it was on average taking like 9 days to get a contract executed. From the time it was ready to go, it was just signatures. But DocuSign, within a month could change that to 1 or 2 days. So there's some ways that you can approach your challenges, but think about piloting so that you get some feedback on your process and that you're more successful when you actually roll it out to everyone else. But then
Heather, can I just say one thing? Because something that you mentioned sort of sparked something. We were talking about data collection and sort of piloting programs. One thing that I hear a lot when I speak to a new client is I always ask them in the real estate context, how long does it take to negotiate your deal? And I also ask them, do you currently track that data? And often the answer is no, we don't track it, but we have a pretty good idea. And so I always ask them how long it takes to negotiate a lease transaction. Every single client pre-client that I speak to always will say 3 to 4 months. That's just sort of the industry standard. I think everyone wants it to be 3 or 4 months. And when we actually track the data, we find that it's not 3 or 4 months. And so it's, there's this importance of tracking data to see what your actual problem is. And to Heather's point about signing contracts, I'm sure they had a similar thought that, oh, we probably sign contracts in 2 to 3 days. And then when we dig into the data and actually do the tracking, you find it's just not the reality.
Perfect. Thanks, Eric. That's great. And I do remember, Dustin, that the triage email intake box that we put together that you managed during COVID.
Yes. So again, speaking to our own legal ops journey internally, once the COVID pandemic set in, we realized that we needed some sort of manner of triaging these constant clamor of inquiries coming from across the firm, desperate folks trying to serve their clients while we're figuring out what do these shelter-in-place orders mean, what are we going to do for business interruption insurance, like all kinds of things, and actually applying a we kind of like took a step back on us. I remember it was a Saturday, March 20th, I want to say. And we took a step back and said, we need to figure out what is the process going to be for triaging these inquiries and getting them sourced out to the right people and following up to make sure that their questions were answered. And that is a thing that we've also discussed with a number of our clients. I want to put an employment law lens on this, for instance. Say that you are employment internal counsel interfacing with your HR team, and your HR team is coming to you kind of, in an ad hoc, abstract fashion when there's some sort of investigation that's been launched or something along those lines. We have found that applying a triage framework to it and trying to, and this is what we taught our teams internally through the pandemic, like give us these bullet points of information that we need to know in advance, and we will find you the resources to staff the solution, to research the solution internally for you all. If you're dealing with employment law and you're dealing with HR, these are the bullet points that we need to know. You can provide it in one of those fillable PDFs. You can provide it in some sort of intake form, whatever it is, but it's going to make your lives that much more operationally easy when you've gotten all of the information that you need up front so that you can launch the investigation accordingly or engage with outside counsel accordingly. Outside counsel will thank you for having obtained those data points. But to be clear, it is not something that should be built in a vacuum. It should be built as a collaborative process with your stakeholders. And so I know we're running close on time. Eric does have some final talking points, but very importantly, I'm going to interrupt to share the CLE code, which I know you have all been listening for, and then we'll wrap up after that. But the CLE code is SS7388. Again, that CLE code is SS, as in Seyfarth Shaw, 7388. All right, and then Eric, any final key themes that you want to emphasize for us?
Thanks, Dustin. So the tools that we discussed today are really just the first steps in your journey of becoming your own legal ops function. We easily could have spent over an hour discussing each one of these topics, as you can probably imagine. But one thing to remember as you build out your legal ops function within your own legal departments is that you're not alone. There are very helpful resources all around you, beginning with our friends and your friends at the ACC, including all of your in-house peers. Reach out to them, talk to them. The issues and challenges you face are certainly being faced by everyone else attending this program. So with that in mind, in our last few minutes, we'll take into a question and answer session. If people want to write questions in the chat box, if we're unable to get to your question, or should you want to explore a topic in greater detail, feel free to reach out to the ACC or reach out to any of us, today's panelists. But we want to thank you for your time and good luck with your legal ops journey. So the first question is to repeat the CLE code, which is a very important question.
Happy to do it. It is SS as in Seyfarth Shaw or Sierra 7388.
And
Any
someone
other
asked if there
questions?
will be a recording and the PowerPoint for this, since there was a lot of information and definitely hard to soak in. So that, yes, there will be a recording and a copy of the slide deck circulated most likely by tomorrow.
Any other questions? Well, if not, there's no reason that we need to push this entirely through to the hour. So Heather, any closing thoughts from you?
Just good luck, and may the force be with you all.
Yeah, exactly. And we look forward to talking with you all. Always happy to answer questions. Eric, I'll leave it with you.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Good luck on your legal ops adventure. It's going to be a lot of work, but it's well worth it. And feel free to reach out to any of us if you need any assistance.